Good evening, guys. So a question I've been asked recently is how to work with leaderboards in Horizon Worlds using TypeScript. So we're going to go through a very, very quick demo today as of how to do that, because I learned there's any documentation out there on how to do it, so I figure some of you guys might find that quite useful. Just before we get started, these videos do take a bit of time and effort to prep and make, even though we make it like child's play. Please consider dropping a like on the video just to flag it up that you did find it useful, and also do consider a subscription as well. And I'm always trying to put out fresh content just to sort of help people. But like I said, feed me ideas, give me what you want to learn, and yeah, I'll take them into consideration. We'll see. I'll let you know if I'm so interested in doing them. I think if they're beneficial to many, then of course I'll do them. But yes, please do like and subscribe. It's very, very important. It does help me out, and in turn I will help you out. Thank you very much. So okay, without any further ado, let's jump straight back in. So the basic premise with a leaderboard is that you can write a value to a leaderboard, but you can't read a value from a leaderboard. So you need to sort of play with the persistent player variables as well. So we'll be covering kind of two things on this, and we'll be going entirely in TypeScript. We'll be looking at an incrementing score using TypeScript, reading a value from a persistent player variable, writing that persistent variable, and then finally saving it to a scoreboard. So stay tuned. Here I have a brand new blank level, and we'll start with the very basics. So as you know, leaderboards need to be defined. Just find my mouse pointer. Leaderboards need to be defined in the Systems tab at the top, just up here. So when we go in here, let's click on Leaderboards, and you'll see we have currently no leaderboards in our level. So we're going to add one. Okay. And we're going to say, yeah, give it a name. The name's important, okay? You'll need to reference that later. So we're going to say like num times triggered. Okay. Let's go back and correct that. There we go. Num times triggered. Wonderful. Okay, so let's just save that. And I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard because I'm also going to create a persistent variable with the same name. Okay. So you can see that's now created up there. If I now go into systems and I go into variable groups, well, you'll see that I can add a new variable group to this world. Okay, and I'll call it, give it a relevant name to the world, as you might want to share this between different worlds, but for now we'll just say like blank test, okay? I can't spell today, guys. I think no apologies for that capitalization. Okay, and we'll do a description. It's not important, but this is a test, a group. Okay. Yes, we're going to add this group to this world as well. All right, perfect. So now we've created this blank test variable group. We're going to create a variable, and we're going to paste in that same name that we gave leaderboard, okay, which was num times triggered. Easy, right? But yeah, the data type, we won't worry about this too much. We're going to just go with a default number, okay? So it supports two data types really in the persistent variables, objects and numbers. Objects we'll cover another day. But so now we'll just go with numbers. So if we create that, and then you can see we've got our num times triggered persistent variable, which is one of 100 possible variables we can have in this variable group that belongs to the blank test variable group. So with that in mind now, we're gonna set up our level, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in build. I'm going to go to gizmos. Okay. The simplest way we can output this is going to be a text object. Okay? So the next thing I want is some kind of trigger. Okay. So I'm going to just plot this down to, yeah, and we'll straighten these up on the floor in just a second. Okay. I'm going to give this a default sort of value in the text field. Just up here, sorry, just above my head. I don't know if you'd see that. But I'm just going to tap 0 just up there. Okay. So that text now shows a big old 0. So it's quite a good indicator. The text is going to display to me basically the position of where the trigger is, okay? So know the trigger is right in front of it. So I'm going to just quickly use this as a gauge. Oh, like so. So the next thing I'm going to do, I've got my trigger and I've got my value, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to go into build and gizmos again, and I'm going to pull in a leaderboard, okay? Very important. So that leaderboard is going to be hiding in here somewhere, guys. Yeah, world leaderboard, there we go. So I'm going to pull that out here and plot this sort of here-ish. I'll position this more over here, I guess. There we go. So make sure that you have the times triggered gizmo selected. So the leaderboard selected just behind me here. So if I move over here, this will make a bit more sense. So over here, you need to make sure that this is set to your num times triggered, which is of course the name of your leaderboard, okay? And you give it a custom title. So I've called it times triggered. You can see the updates on that. It sort of puts that as the manual label. There's loads of other options you can use here. Pull that back to here and down to here and across to here. Wonderful. Oh, maybe that's a little bit low. Let's pull it upwards. So if I just quickly test the position that well and just see if everything looks hunky-dory from the ground. Let's go. Yeah, okay, so leaderboard is viewable. That's great. And if I have a look, I've got my, oops, this is where the trigger is. You can't see it in run mode, but it is here. And then we've got the value there, which we'll be setting shortly. So, okay, now we've got the stage set up. Let's move into Typescript. So to do that, let's tap the exit button to come out. I'm going to scripts in the top, and I'm going to hit this little create new script button, a little plus button just at the top. Okay, and I'm going to say times triggered. Okay, and then if I press enter on that, give it a second, and eventually, oh, there you go, it appears. So now if I double click on this, this should pop open. If you've got it installed, Visual Studio Code, which allows you to then edit the script. So I'm going to just make sure we can see the little setting on. Yeah, here we go. Wonderful. Okay, guys. So now we're in, yeah, we've got our times triggered score just up here. Okay. So this is a standard component TypeScript, okay? So this is where we start. You'll notice it actually suggests we go with the HZ alias, which you can see links into the Horizon core library, which is imported from there, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to hook into a Horizons event, sort of a code block event, right? So what I'm going to do, this is the bit where it gets a bit complicated, okay? And in fact, I may need to pull up a reference. I'm going to do that in the background. I'll always make sure you work with reference APIs. So bear with me, I'm just going to try and find where the right pointer's gone. I'm going to define a new pre-start. This is quite useful. If you're going to ask me what a pre-start does, it fires before the start. That's all I've got for you right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this dot connect code block event. Okay, I can just press tab to sort of bring that up. Now the code block event that I want is, first of all, it's going to fire against this dot entity, okay? And then what I need to do is I need to have a look for something called hz.code mop events. Okay. And then I'm going to say on player enter trigger. Yeah, on player enter trigger. Let's do that. There you go. And then the next thing we need to do is to say, well, actually, what are we now doing here? So what I'm going to do, and this might not be the best advice, but I'm going to create a method in here with the same name, but I'm going to give it a lowercase here. Okay. And I'm going to find that. It's just a, I don't know why it's putting this entity on the end of that. Sometimes when you work with the AI suggest, it sort of gets a little carried away. So, okay, let's just end. But yeah. So I need to bind this. Hope you guys can see this. So you can see it's complaining because there's no such thing as on player enter trigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to. Sorry, I've got rid of the brace there for the save. There you go. So I'm going to create a method down here now called on player enter trigger. And my AI, I'm running Copilot in the background, which I do use for rapid development, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to try and ignore that. So now I've got on player enter trigger, which takes in a player, which takes a player argument, and that will be bound. You can actually see from this, just hovering on it. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so I think that's it in terms of like setting up the trigger. So just to test that, I do console.log, and yeah, I'm going to go with an AI flow on this one. So it's going to say player name has entered trigger, but just to keep this simple, I'm going to keep it a really simple message. I'm going to say player has entered trigger area, and I'm just going to get rid of this as that. So what we're going to do now is just check, look, no errors, which is good. Visual Studio Code will tell you in the problems window if you've got any errors. That's very important. And then if we click on this, we're going to tap the script, this little button just up to the side of me here. And we're going to go into, let's just move to the side. You can see we've got our new class there. So if we click on that, yeah. So it doesn't really do much at the moment. If I bring up the console, okay, I'm just going to hit clear on this. Now, if I hit play, we're in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk into this trigger area, and you'll see it'll just fire that console.log, and that's how we know our event is wired up directly. There you go. You can see it down the bottom. It says the player has entered the trigger area, and just next to it, you can see that's been triggered once. If I walk back and forward again, you can see that's now been hit twice. There's a number 2 down there. And just for thoroughness, let's walk back and go in here. Oh, we're up to 4 now. Perfect. Okay. So if I press escape here, double tap escape, we're out of here. Right. So what I'm going to do now is go back into our Visual Studio Code. Okay. So back to our times trigger plus. Okay. So now what I need to do is open up the persistence. So we are going to let's say this dot, and I believe it's world, and then we say persistent storage. Okay. And now comes the challenging bit. So I'm going to have to just say, we want to get player variable. Okay, so get player variable. Okay. So you can see that some of the hint that's come up for that is we need to provide the player argument, which luckily we've got just up here. It's been passed in. So we can do that. Player. Okay, and then it wants the string literal, the actual string that will resolve to that. And then actually that's it, that's all it wants. So we can end that. So if I say const, say value, oops, excuse my spelling, it's atrocious. Const value is equal to, now get player variable will return, I believe, a number from this. So I wonder if I cast this as a number, like so, does that work? It does. So just so we know what we're dealing with. So the next thing I need to do is work out what needs to go in this little string literal. Well, if you remember, the variable group that we put in, right? It's called blank test. You can see that, right? So if I put in blank test, okay, and then I put a colon in just here, okay, and then if I go back into this variable group section, I just click on that. Now you can see num times triggered. So if I need to copy that, I can just click on edit. We can't see this because the window is in the way, but if I just copy that, I can close that little window now. So if I just jump into share, I can pop that num times triggered in there. Okay. And that's it. We're gonna basically set this now, okay? Well, actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say value +1, okay? Yeah, so when we get that value, so it'll always start off as 0, okay? It'll always start off as 0. If a player has not used that yet, it will always be 0. So we're saying get the value and add 1 to it. So we can actually now call this new score, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sort of copy this line because the next thing we would do is quite similar. If I just say this will persistent storage, and now we want to set up player variable, okay? And we're going to keep that same key here, but we're going to take off this -1 on the end. And we're going to say in here, new score, okay? So we're getting the value on this line. We're setting the value on this line. And then down here we can say console.log. And do you know what? I'm going to go with the AI generation there. This is player meme has triggered this entity, new score times. It's interpolated that string. So if I just save that, and if I now minimize that, let's give this a second for the script to actually load. Good, no errors. That's what we like to see, guys. And now if I just clear the console down here, I'm going to hit run. Let's see what happens. So if I run into here, click. So there's a reason it says object. I didn't invoke the get name correctly, but that's okay. It says I've triggered the entity 1 times, which is fine because it's a new persistent variable and it's set to 1. If I now step back and move back in, feel that. So it's actually upping the persistent variable every time. If I come out of the scene by double tapping the exit button, and then if I press play again, watch what happens. This is me coming into a new session. To that, I could have walked into it twice, but I've triggered it 3 times and 4 times. It's remembered that I already passed through it 2 times already, so that's cool. That's cool. Okay, now, you'll notice the leaderboard is still blank, and that's because we haven't actually invoked that call yet. The good news is, it's just 1 more line of code at this point. How exciting. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the script, and then down, remove that console log. Maybe you don't have to, but I don't like even console logs in once I've sort of proved it works. Just remove this a sec. There we go. So what I'm going to say is this dot, and now I think it's world. Let's leaderboards. Okay, so I'm gonna say set score for player, and you can see it's sort of giving me a hint as to what it wants here. Now these hints aren't always to be believed. Sometimes they do come from the AI, but sometimes they are actually coming from the API, which is lovely. So if I now just open the brace here and I tap in player, So that's the player again that's been passed into this argument. If I now say, okay, what I'm going to do is put that string literal there, and I'm going to set the new score that we used above. Yeah, I'm going to have to terminate that line there, so what's it say? Override, okay. So there's another thing. Override means override the score that's already on the leaderboard. We do want to do that here. If you don't do that, it means if there's already a score, it will not override it. So you obviously don't want to do that. So that's interesting. Look, it's throwing up. An argument of type player is not assignable to type string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say player dot, I think it's name and dot get. Okay. Wonderful, look at that. So it's now complaining that there's nothing in here. This can't be. Oh, I'm sorry, I've gotten the wrong rest. My bad. So if I just remove this and put this in here. So yeah, don't trust the code completion. Sometimes it's trying to lead us astray. So if I need to just take this out then. There we go. Perfect, it's happy now. So what it's saying is we're setting the score. But we've got to give it the correct name now. Do you remember right at the start of the video, we used num times triggered, both as the name of the persistent variable, but we also initially declared it as the name of the leaderboard in this particular world. Let's just paste that in. Right. Okay. I need to. So, I'm confident that's going to work, guys. So let's just save that and then we minimize it and come back in here. Now, because I've been through this already a few times, my persistent variable is already up to, I think, 5. Now, one thing at the moment, and I hope this will be fixed in time, is that the actual leaderboard in tests doesn't seem to be populated yet. So we're going to jump across to the actual runtime in just a moment, and we'll have a look how this plays. And you should be able to see this is actually going. Right, okay, bear with me. We're going to jump across. Okay, guys. So here we are. We're actually in the world that we just made a moment ago. So we're going to test the leaderboard just here and see if it works. So yeah, I'm going to walk into here so you can see, look, if I run through here, see as I run into that trigger, and the leaderboard updates. Yeah, so again, in your own scoring systems, you may need to secure them down a little bit just so you don't have people cheating. But yeah, there's a leaderboard with Typescript. And again, remember, you need to use it in concert with persistent variables, of course, and that's basically how you do it, guys. That's how you do it. That's simple, right? A few lines of code. I hope that was informative. If you've got any things that you need me to do, by the way, just shout. I take on all suggestions. If there's something that's really bugging people or they can't get the hang of, either, visit me in the White Lotus and I can try and give you some advice. Or if it's a bit more juicy, I'll make a video for sure. But yeah, and I hope that was useful, guys.